Welcome to Football Game Plan Scout Team here on the Game Plus Network. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, joining with Chris James at the 2020 NFL Scouting Combine. Chris, it's our 100th episode here on the Game Plus Network, Football Game Plan on Game Plus. So we're celebrating a little bit of a birthday here, a little bit of a milestone here out in Indianapolis. But
Absolutely.
When you look at why we are here, the Scouting Combine, this is your first experience here at the Combine. Yes. What are some of your overall initial impressions here on day one?
I love the level of access that we're granted here, the ease of being able to interview and go up to players, and also the completeness of what's offered here. And some of the other events I've been to have done a great job, but this one really gives you the chance to lock in with players.
And we're inside. Last time you were here on the Game Plus Network, we were out in the cold in Mobile.
A little cold.
It was a little cold out there. You look at the transition going from an all-star game to the Combine. What are some of the things that you want to see? Because, again, you saw some of these players out there on the field. You watched some of their film, but you saw them in an all-star game setting. Now we're here in a different setting. What are some of the things that you're looking for from those guys that you saw already on film and out there live?
Yes, so in the all-star game circuit, it's all about competition, right? They're competing with each other. They're showcasing their talents via the other player. Here it's about self-reflection and also presenting yourself as the player in the product and what you're going to be on the next level. So it's its own right of competition that's more personalized.
And the thing about being here at an event like the Combine, it's more about how players handle the moment. Right. Football is the easy part. It's dealing with the media. It's dealing with the interviews of the teams. You have to be on your best behavior. You have also to compete out here. So when you look at the Combine in general, where do you stack that in where you evaluate players, or do you really put a lot of stock in what we're seeing out here at all?
I do put stock into it. So there's the things that we all know about. The 40-yard dash, everyone wants to see that. How many reps can you do on the bench press? But no, it is the communication and how you handle those interviews, and everyone's eyes are on you. You know, the easy part is the workouts. It is running the 40. It's really how do you relate. Actually, Brian Flores was being interviewed. He's on the podium earlier, and he was saying this is their opportunity to get to know who you are as a person, because they can consume as much film as possible, but at the end of the day, they want to know who you are and whether you're going to fit into that team dynamic.
Yeah, because here's the thing about the Combine. The film has been done already,
right,
but there are unique parts of being here, the player interviews, seeing the type of person you are, but also on the field. When you look at what the big headline is while we're here, it's usually the 40-yard dash, Chris.
Yes.
So I know the 40-yard dash really doesn't mean anything. I have an article up on The Athletic talking about what I would change about the Combine.
Right.
But what's some of the on-field events that you're looking forward to seeing?
I want to see things like the short shuttle. I want to see how you transition and if you're able to change directions or you're explosive, and does it translate to your position? I mean, again, yes, that's the quote-unquote sexy event is the 40, but, I mean, there's not going to be many times when you're running 40 yards unencumbered without pads on. So, yeah, it's that short shuttle, that transition drill, that's going to really speak to me in certain positions.
Well, why does that matter? Because, you know, let's say with the short shuttle, football is a game of short bursts. Is
Exactly.
that a big reason why you think that is a very critical drill?
It is a game of short burst. It is a game of suddenness. And if you're able to do that, it can explain things that you see on the tape as to why you're successful, or it could explain things as to why you might have some things that you need to work on. Not really deficiencies, but just things that you need to refine.
We talk about the game speed and time speed with the 40-yard dash. Does that really matter? Let's say you run a 4.3, but on the field you play 4.6. Why do you see that difference in variation of time when dealing with the 40-yard dash, and why so much emphasis is being put on how fast you are on a stopwatch?
Well, there is a portion of it that has come into play. I mean, 40 get you paid.
True.
And that's the thing. Guys will train and refine their skill running that particular drill, but they don't play at that speed. And it could be that they have that level of speed, but they're still processing and they're going through all the mechanics of it instead of just feeling the game. So that's the thing that can speak to you. If you see a person who plays at a 4.6 but ran a 4.29, you know he has the ability, but how can we speed up this processing so we can maximize your ability on the field?
Now, one other drill that's here that gets a lot of hype is the vertical jump. Can you explain to the viewers out there what significance does a vertical jump have? What does that show you? Because people look at, okay, he jumped high, but that tells you a lot about explosiveness.
Right, absolutely. And that's what it's tied to, that quick twitch. It's not just going up and high pointing a ball if you're a receiver or a defensive back. Will you be able to explode through on a tackle as a linebacker? What do you bring behind you? So it does show you traits that maybe you're not able to pick up on film, or sometimes it supports, again, what you see on film.
Yeah, we're here at the 2020 NFL Scouting Combine. Chris James, Emory Hunt, and again, day one has just wrapped up. We have some coaching interviews that we were attending, and player interviews, and GMs are speaking right now as we speak. But we'll take a quick commercial break and be back with more Football Game Plan Scout Team here on the Game Plus Network.
Man, it's that old thing, perseverance, consistency, hard work. My goal is to put the same work into, my businesses, my family that I put into football, and I've been running with that mantra since I got married back in '97, that if I'm going to have a successful marriage, I got to, the same hard work and same consistency and discipline I had on the football field, I got to put in my marriage and with my kids and with my businesses and all that. So it teaches you a lot, man. How to deal with your fellow man and not look at his color, but look at what he can do for the overall good of what you're trying to accomplish. So sports to me in general is just an incredible deal. When you talk about football specifically, because of the closeness of guys, I just believe it's an amazing sport.
Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Ninth and Lux. Visit the website ninethandlux.com and check out the clothing gallery. Do You Music with featured artist IW and his latest album, Season 2. You can check that out on iTunes as well as doyoumusic.com. Nesby Phipps, art, life, entertainment. NesbyPhipps.com. Grind It Out Fitness. Visit the website grinditoutfitness.com and download the app. Welcome back to Football Game Plan's Scout Team here on the Game Plus Network, joined now by football analyst Teron Davenport. Teron, we're here at the 2020 NFL Scouting Combine. Not your first rodeo, but what are some of your takeaways? This is day one initially from what we saw today.
Well, quarterbacks, we'll stick to the receivers. And I wanted to kind of look at some of these guys and just find out what route combinations they like the most. And the big thing now for me is when you pop on Twitter or social media, period, you see all these too much of an emphasis on footwork. And you want to have footwork, but you see too much going on with the routes that they're running and their releases. So I wanted to talk to some of the guys as far as like how they're able to balance being swift at the line of scrimmage and getting off, but not having too much chatter. So that was probably my biggest takeaway, some of the feedback I got from the guys about that.
Because you played the receiver position in college, you know how much stuff has to happen before you even get the football, and you know how much time you have to make that route happen. Otherwise, he's moving on to the next option. How do you coach that out of a receiver that has worked on training his footwork, that has worked on trying to be quicker with his feet, to where that part doesn't carry on to your route running that takes too much time?
I think really you got to take it in phases, right? And whether it's man or zone, the first area that you win is with your release. So I think you start there, and you have to eliminate the wasted steps. So really the key thing is you could use cones, you could even just yourself come up and like as if you're pressing them, and you have to get him to understand not to waste movement, right? It's always about getting forward, but you want to set it up too. And so it's just finding that balance and giving a guy different looks. And obviously against zone, you teach how to stem your routes right. So that way you could move the corner, move the safety. Let's say you're running a post, right? And you want to stem your route inside. Let's just say it's cover 2. You stem your route inside, and then you go up the seam, and then you get the move. And then, it's those type of things. Break it down that way. And I think it's important to teach guys how to use head fakes and things like that. Like, I wasn't a fast receiver, but I was able to get open a lot of times just using my eyes. Whereas, I come out, I'm looking at the corner, and I want to go in here, so I direct him here with my eyes and lean here, stick my foot in the ground. But again, no wasted movement, foot in the ground, and you explode this way or vice versa.
It's funny because we are in our 100th year of the NFL. This is our 100th episode of Football Game Plan on Game Plus Network. So sticking with that theme, thinking all time here, who are some of the receivers, let's say your top 2 favorite receivers of all time that you want to talk about?
Of all time.
And I know 2 is tough to say because I don't want to give you a top 5 list, but let's just say 2 guys and 1 guy that's underrated that you really like watching.
Okay, well, I'll go two guys, and I'll say my favorite for the underrated.
Okay.
Because he's my favorite ever. But I'll start off with T.O. And for me, the thing about T.O., and obviously everybody has the thing about he's quote-unquote a bad teammate, which I don't think is substantiated. But for me, it was the complete receiver, right? And it always goes back to that run that Garrison Hurst had where that stiff arm, and then that run ended up, I think it was like 98 yards. And if you look at the last 10 to 15 yards, you see 81 pop in the screen and block down the field and open that up. So what that tells me, he's not a selfish player.
Right.
But then on top of that, I go back to the slant he caught against the Giants in that playoff game. Jason Sehorn, who is a solid corner, he just bounced right off of him, and he kept going. He ran, it was like 67 yards for a touchdown. Then you look at his ability to go deep. I think T.O. it's a hot take, but if you go complete receiver, obviously Randy Moss, he does this, you know what it is. But I think if you go complete receiver, T.O. is the best ever, in my opinion, if you go from all aspects, because he's a better blocker, in my opinion, than Rice. I think he's better after the catch than Rice. But, that's my hot take. If you go another receiver, I mean, I love Marvin Harrison, the consistency, but we always talk about hashtag that dog.
That dog.
Man, look, I don't know if there's a guy that played with more dog in him than Steve Smith. I loved watching him play, right? When he had who was it? I don't remember who the corner was, but he jumped up and he caught it, and in the whole process of in the air catching it, stiff-armed him to the ground, landed, and then scored the touchdown. I want to say Charles Tillman, but I don't know for sure if
we're
it was
not going to have
him.
any Raging Cajuns slander on this episode.
It may not have been Peanut, but just the fact that the aggression that he played with, and you talk about another guy who caught the slants and turned it upfield, and I mean he has probably the strongest stiff arm out of anybody ever from the receiver position.
And
slept on. My favorite receiver all time is Andre Reed.
Okay.
Always loved his game. Always loved his game. Catching that slant, getting the yards after the catch. He's another one, probably one of the best yards after the catch ever. But he did more than that. And, boy, you talk about getting body rocked and holding on to the ball. He would always say, I'm going to get hit anyway, so I might as well catch it and get the glory. So those would be the guys.
Now, we're here talking about receivers, but obviously there are going to be some guys here at the Combine that you're going to keep a close eye on. Who are some of the receivers that you're interested in seeing working out here this week in Indy?
Well, I like Devin Duvernay a lot. So he's one, but I think I look forward to seeing Jalen Reagor because, man, I don't know if you saw him at the podium.
Bowled up.
Yeah, he looked like he was on
the weight room.
He been using the Bowflex, man. He definitely was diesel, and I want to see if he's able to put that weight on and still run fast. So those are a couple guys. Brandon Ayuk, I don't believe he's running, but there's so many receivers here, but I would say Duvernay, Jalen Reagor, Van Jefferson too, man. There's so many guys. And he was good to talk to about keeping that chatter to a minimum. Same with Courtney Davis. I talked to him a lot. He's working with Footwork King, so there's going to be extra emphasis on that. And I actually got him to draw up a play, so it was good. So there's a bunch of guys.
Yeah, earlier in the segment we talked about. I talked with Chris James about the receivers and the functional drills here. What's the one drill that is functional for you guys that you want to see guys participate in? Because we know not every drill really translates, but one that you say like, all right, this drill is the one you have to watch.
Are we including drills where you
on
catch
field
the
drills,
ball?
Yeah.
On field, gauntlet all day, because it shows your ability to catch passes behind you, to run through the catch, because yards after the catch is huge. So I would say that. I would say pull emphasis from the 40, focus on the gauntlet, the 3-cone, but I think the gauntlet is the biggest one.
Yeah, biggest one. We're excited to see here is day one for the 2020 NFL Scouting Combine. Teron Davenport joined us here in segment 2, Block B, but we'll take another quick commercial break and be back with more Football Game Plan Scout Team here on the Game Plus Network. Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Financial Coaching LLC, Investment, Retirement, Security, Stewardship Credit. Financial growth is in your hands. StewardshipCredit.com. Adrienne Marie Photo, photographer, writer, management. AdrienneMariePhotography.com. Lock Multimedia. Welcome back to Football Game Plan Scout Team here on the Game Plus Network. Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, back with Chris James. Chris, We're at the 2020 NFL Scouting Combine, our 100th episode. We got to keep mentioning that because Game Plus Network has done a great job in promoting Football Game Plan's brand. So we are appreciative of Game Plus Network. But now it's time to talk quarterbacks.
Yes.
And one guy in particular, Jalen Hurts, was one of the many guys that had a lot of people in the media at the podium. But let's talk about Jalen Hurts right quick. What were some of your takeaways from what he said out there at the podium?
The level of confidence that this young man has in himself and his ability to lead a team shows you what you want in your signal caller and shows you what you want as your franchise quarterback. He was very comfortable and confident in his delivery. Any question that was asked, he addressed it completely, no issues or breakdowns, and that just exudes, and it follows up a great career at both Alabama and then Oklahoma.
Yeah, the fact that he went to Alabama initially, got humbled and got benched, but then came back and led his team to a couple of wins when they needed him the most, transfers over to Oklahoma, short summer, short spring, picks up that offense, finishes as a Heisman finalist, says a lot about his mental capability and his capacity as a pro prospect. When you look at some of the questions about his game, what is one of the bigger questions you have about what he brings to the table?
One of the things that's an issue, and I think it's something that could get cleaned up, is I think he put too much on himself. And sometimes instead of just making the play that was in front of him, he tried to make the bigger play, or he tried to get as much as feasibly possible instead of just taking it. So that's going to be a conversation that his team has with him. He's the type of guy that can correct something like that because that's what he's done. Anytime there's been any adversity, each year he's made himself better at something. So that would be the number one thing that I would have him address moving forward.
Let's go to his former teammate, Tua Tagovailoa. Everyone is focusing on his hip, so we're not going to talk about the hip just yet. But let's talk about his takeaways from the interview and your overall thoughts on him as a person and also as a player.
One of the things that I got as a takeaway is there is a genuineness to this young man, and you actually want him to be successful because he comes off with that aura. So his teammates are going to want to play hard for him. Sometimes that's the big thing is, does your team want to play for you? And do they want to play with you? So he's going to do well wherever he goes because of that genuineness, and it showed on the podium today.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that you can tell loves the game,
Yes.
passionate about it, and just a genuinely good dude.
Yes.
When you look at his injury now, that's 3 injuries in 2 years, the 2 ankles and the hip. Are you worried about him long term? And if so, where would you take him in the draft?
So I was not worried about him initially with the ankles because theoretically they can come back stronger, and that's actually what we've been told about that tightrope surgery. Mm-hmm. The hip's a little bit of a concern to me from the perspective that, I mean, we don't ever know how an injury is going to affect someone until they're actually back in game action. So I'm hoping that it doesn't become a concern. It seems like things are checking out very well for him. So wish him nothing but luck on that because, to be honest, as a quarterback and being a forceful thrower like he is, that can really cut down on how you're able to jam that ball in there. So that's the situation. Where would I take him? Based on everything offered, the only team that I'd feel comfortable taking him, the only team that can take him in the top 10, and I can defend it, is the Miami Dolphins because of all the draft capital they have this year and the fact that they can go and address other needs with high-value players. Most other teams, I mean, the medicals are a thing, and we have to keep that in mind, as well as, I mean, he's not perfect. He's a really good quarterback, but he does have some things that he needs to work on as well.
Third quarterback we're going to talk about when we finally get to the Heisman Trophy winner, Joe Burrow, Mr. Joe Burrow, Burreaux himself.
Exactly.
Burrow does a great job on the field, throwing with accuracy, touch timing, anticipation that we always talk about. But what were your takeaways from his presser, which he did sitting down?
He did sitting down, and he had probably the biggest crowd today. Handled everything really well. Was so comfortable that it was almost as if he was an actor in some ways. Whether it was, oh, you, that type of thing. So seeing that level of comfort with everything focused in on him just shows you that he's not going to be bothered by anything. Nothing's going to faze this kid, and that means that he's going to do well when he gets the opportunity to do so on Sundays, Thursdays, and Mondays.
Right, whenever we play the NFL now every day of the week.
Exactly.
You talk about one of the issues that people have been making a big deal about, his hand size. Does that really matter for a quarterback?
I think that there can be some concerns with hand size, right? It makes it easier to throw the ball if you have a larger hand because it's easier to hold on to. But if we sit here and think about this, did we ever see any issue with fumbling or any problems in any of the games that he played this year? No. I've seen dudes with huge hands fumble the ball. So as long as it's not an issue on tape, and it has not been, I don't see why it should be an issue when he gets to the NFL.
Couple more quarterbacks we're going to touch here, and both playing out west. We're going to start with Oregon's quarterback, Justin Herbert. He looks the part getting off the bus, 6'6", 225. What are your takeaways from Herbert?
Herbert is one of those guys where, yes, he checks all the boxes. One of my concerns is there's still something that does not seem to be there. And whether it was a scheme-based issue, as people said, oh, the scheme didn't fit well to his strengths. If that's the situation, then we'll see it. But I want to see a little more from him. And the number one thing, and I don't want to mention this in a way that sounds sort of way, but I want to make sure that he's as confident as his game should be. He's
right.
An uber-talented guy, highly intelligent. I want that confidence to show through more often.
Yeah, you want him to be confident in himself,
yes,
as his skills should suggest. You look at the other guy out west, played in the Mountain West Conference, and that's Jordan Love from Utah State. Love is a guy that was kind of up and down, but what are your thoughts on Love and how he handled himself today at the presser?
So Love is actually the opposite of Joe Burrow from the perspective that if you didn't know about Love's season last year, he had an excellent season. And this year there were some ups and downs, and that's kind of the opposite Joe Burrow had. Mediocre season and then the excellent season this year. He seemed like he got it. He seemed like he understood where his downfalls happened this year and got over it. And that confidence that he does have did show through today. So that's another thing that you want to look for is how did you face having a season that wasn't up to where you wanted it to be, especially compared to the year prior.
Yeah, because Love is one of those players where you see the physical tools, you see the flashes of brilliance. The LSU game, he had some throws in there. You're like, wow, that's an excellent throw. It's an excellent decision. Then you go to the bowl game against Kent State where you had some questionable decisions. But, those are things that you see on tape, and scouts will do a good job of making sure they go through all of that, take all of that into account before they're making their final evaluation. But, Chris, has been fun here, our 100th episode on the Football Game Plan Scout team on the Game Plus Network. For Chris James, I'm Emory Hunt, the Playbook. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts. Don't forget to check out and subscribe to Football Game Plan Network, located at youtube.com/Football Game Plan, as well as Football Game Plan Podcast on iTunes. Subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating.